I asked all of you to hit me with your bold predictions ahead of the FPL 25-26 season, and you did not disappoint. So in today's video, I'm going to be rating your bold predictions ahead of the FPL season, and I've thrown in a few at the end that are just my own as well. So if you want to stick around for the end, then you're going to hear a few of my bold predictions as well. In the meantime though, do remember to hit like, hit subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. You won't miss out on any future content, and you'll be doing me a massive favor ahead of the start of the season. I can't tell you how much it helps out. Starting off with number 1 and number 2 in combination because they're very closely related. Fella and Economist both have basically said that Salah is washed. Okay, jokes aside, they probably aren't saying that, but what they are saying or suggesting is that Salah will not be the top point scorer for the 25-26 season. And for good measure, Fella has also thrown in Haaland not being it either. And I think Economist was probably thinking, most likely, that if Salah wasn't going to be, Haaland's probably not going to be too far behind and probably be the player that overtakes him. However, Fella's gone one step further and said neither Haaland nor Salah will be. And I quite like that. Now, every season, it's very likely that one of those two is going to be the top point scorer. But if you're a brave FPL manager and you want to go against the tide, then things do shift. It's not like they're going to be the top point scorers every single season until the end of time. At some point, Salah is going to have to drop off. Will it be this season? I don't think it will, personally. However, potentially after AFCON, he might slow down a little bit. So maybe there's a factor there. However, I still think he's at the peak of his power. So I'm going to reject this one. I still think one of Salah or Haaland is going to be the top point scorer. But let's suggest for a minute that maybe they're right. Maybe they won't be. Who else could be? Well, Wirtz coming in at Liverpool is going to be an option. I don't know whether he'll do enough to overtake either of these players, considering he won't be on penalties, but an outside chance. Then you've also got players like Gyökeres signing for Arsenal potentially. You've also got Saka, obviously still at Arsenal. Whichever one of those two takes penalties could be an option to get the top point scorer, granted they stay injury free. And Cole Palmer, although he went a little bit off the boil towards the end of last season, we've seen his pedigree before. He could take another step up this season. He's a young player. Who knows? Now, I would say Salah is still the most likely. After that, probably Haaland. But it wouldn't be the craziest thing to suggest that they both have a little bit of an off season, or maybe just a slow start and some other player capitalizes. So let me know in the comments below how you rate these two. I'm going to say out of 10, maybe a 3 or 4 on the bold prediction scale. I don't think it's likely, but maybe, just maybe, we'll have a season where something a little bit different happens. So on to number 3, closely related to numbers 1 and 2. Marmoush to outscore Haaland next season is undoubtedly a bold claim. 90-minute FPL put this one in. Now, for this to happen, I think Haaland would have to be injured for a significant portion of the season, because if that happens, Marmoush will likely be playing centre forward and likely again be on penalties. And if that's the case, then this could definitely happen, very feasibly, very possibly happen in 25-26. Now, the exciting thing about this is that I don't think it's outlandish to suggest that Marmoush comes in as a midfielder in FPL this season. If that's the case, he gets 5 points for a goal. He obviously also gets the clean sheet point as well. And the bonus isn't too shabby for a midfielder who scores a lot of goals either. So maybe there's an angle there that if Marmoush can chip in with a few more assists than Haaland, maybe it balances itself out just a tad. However, if Haaland can stay fit for the season or for the majority of the season, I would say if he gets 30 plus starts, then this is very unlikely to happen. If Haaland does miss out for any considerable period of time, maybe 10 games over the season, and Marmoush can stay fit, then it's not the craziest idea in the world. And I would put this at maybe a 6 out of 10. Okay, number 4, another bold claim to do with Liverpool, Man City. And this one is Wirtz to play false 9, so slightly out of position, although we've seen little elements of that at Dortmund, at Leverkusen at times. However, again, undoubtedly a bold claim, because to not only play in that position, but also to then win the Golden Boot ahead of Salah, his teammate. You've also got Haaland, you've got Palmer, you've got Saka, maybe even Gyökeres as well. I think it is very unlikely that this happens personally. But that's not to say that he won't be a great FPL asset. I think he will get good goals. I can see him bagging 10 to 15 Premier League goals this season, even if he doesn't play false nine constantly. And then also you'd expect him to get a lot of assists in that Liverpool side as well. So a great FPL asset and will score goals. But I think to win the Golden Boot this season, you're going to need 25 plus. And that seems like a bit much for someone who doesn't historically play as an out-and-out centre forward. He might play there a little bit out of position, as Liverbird FPL has suggested. But for him to play as an out-and-out centre forward, I think would be maybe a little bit of a stretch. He might play as that hold-up false nine role, where I think he could chip in with a lot of goals. To win the Golden Boot, though, I think that's pretty bold. So I like it. I like the ambition. I'm going to go with maybe a 4 out of 10. So every season we look out for the best budget forward to fit in as the 11th or 12th man in our squads. And FPL Henners here has suggested who that player is going to be. And I kind of agree. I back this one. I really like this as a bold claim. Strand Larsen could be the best budget forward out there. And I think the logic is very sound here. The reason I like this the most is I don't see a big price jump. So if he comes in at 7 million, I don't think you could really call him a budget forward necessarily. I think anything under that is fair game at that point. But he's going to be playing in a Wolves side that, although have lost two very talismanic or very important players, Aït-Nouri and, of course, Cunha, Strand Larsen, even with Cunha out of the side last season, stepped up and played really well. And you'd expect him to get penalties now that Cunha is gone too. So if all of that is the case, he's signed permanently for Wolves, so they are backing him. I think if he comes in anything under 6.5 million, Henners is onto a winner here. The fixtures to begin with don't look good enough for me anyway to be backing him from the off. At least I don't think so. Maybe there's an argument to do so. Let me know in the comments below. But I think over the season, as long as he stays fit, which is always the caveat that I use, I think this is a really nice one. And as a bold prediction, I think this has got a strong chance of being the one that comes true. So I'm going to put this down as a 9 out of 10. I really like this one as a bold prediction. Henners, I think you've nailed it. FPL Jimmy G has also come in with a very strong one that I like the look of as well. More on one side than the other, I would say. Maybe not so much McNeil, but one of McNeil or Ndiaye to be the best value player in the game next season. Now, that is a big claim. Of course, best value player could be across the field. It could be a 4.0 defender. It could be a striker that comes out of nowhere at 5 million and just ends up exploding. But I do reckon he's on something with the value side here. I think both of these players come in at around 5.5, maybe 6 million at a push. And Ndiaye in particular, I think, has a good chance of being on penalties and a good chance of being reclassified as a midfielder because he didn't play out and out as a centre forward at all last season. It was mainly Beto up front for Everton. And they've also signed, or are very close to signing at time of recording, a centre forward that will likely be playing in that number 9 role, maybe alongside Beto, maybe instead of Beto, who knows. But Ndiaye probably playing just in behind the centre forward on penalties, on some set pieces, we think as well, perhaps. I think if he comes in at 5.56 million, there's a good chance that we're onto something with this bold claim. And Everton look like a side that are possibly getting rid of the demons of the last couple of seasons. They're strengthening a little bit. Moyes is a good manager. They've got a system that seemed to work ever since he came in. So again, I actually do really like this one. And Ndiaye could be a player that sneaks into my game week 1 side as well. So I hope he's right. Jimmy G, I'm going to put you down as an 8 out of 10 because not quite as good as the last one. I think there are other value players in the game that could also come out. So it's a little bit more bold. I think Ndiaye is really good though. McNeil, maybe not quite so high, but I really like Ndiaye. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to tackle 7 and 8 as a combination because they've gone completely opposite ends of the spectrum. So let me know which you think is more likely to happen. I would say it's not strictly FPL either, but I'll let it off on this case because it's a good discussion to have and there are FPL assets to talk about here. But FPL for Life has gone in with Man United to be in yet another relegation battle. I say yet another, it's only been one, and I wouldn't say they were really in a battle, but to be in and amongst the mix of maybe, let's say 15th downwards until towards the end of the season, that is a bold claim considering they're strengthening, considering they don't have to worry about Europe. I think that is unlikely to happen personally. And I know that we're going to get a lot of Man United haters in the comments saying, oh, this is nailed in. They're definitely going down this season. Amorim doesn't know what he's doing, etc., etc. On the other side of things, Getty FPL says Man United finish in the top 6. So, which way is it going to go? Are they going to have another pretty diabolical season by their standards, or are the signings they're making, are the fact that they're not in Europe and the fact that Amarim's had a pre-season to bed in, is that all going to help them boost up the league a little bit and get towards a European spot? And if that's the case, then players like Bruno, Cunha, and Burmo, maybe even Dorgu in the defence, maybe a few others will be factors as well. Maybe we can have some bargains on our hand in FPL. And if that's the case, I think that's just relevant enough to make this an FPL kind of bold prediction. I think I prefer Geddes over FPL for Lives. I think it's much more likely that they end up in the top quadrant, in the top 6 or 7 in a European fight than they do end up in another relegation battle. However, I think more likely they come something like 8th, 9th, 10th. I think that's probably like the median of where they might end up. I think at a stretch they might get into Europe. I can see them getting top 6 because they've got a solid enough squad and they're strengthening. If they get Mbermo through the door, if they sign a top quality striker and maybe strengthen through the spine just a little bit more, I don't think they'll be anywhere near as bad as they were last season. And I think it's much more likely that they end up fighting for Europe than they are to be in another relegation fight. So, number 7, I'm going to go 4 out of 10. It's not impossible. I don't hate it. And it's bold, definitely bold. With number 8, I'm going to go 6 out of 10. I don't think it's an absolute nailed one. I don't think it's the best bold prediction I've ever heard. And it's not strictly FPL relevant, so I can't give it 8, 9, 10. But I still quite like it. And I still think there's FPL learnings to be taken from it. And if they are in that top 6, 7 fight, then we're going to have some players on our hands to talk about. Another strictly not quite FPL related one from FPL Nightmare, Brentford to be relegated. So instead of Man United to being a relegation fight, he's actually gone out and out to say Brentford will be relegated. I would say it's a bold prediction because, let's face it, the promoted sides over the last couple of seasons have struggled to get out of the mire and have gone straight back down. So for any Premier League side, other than those 3, to go back down is going to be fairly bold. And Brentford have been a mid-table Premier League side for a few seasons now. They're run very well. They make good signings. They sell their players for much more than they bought them for. So they're a very well-run football club. However, I don't think it's the craziest prediction, considering we've seen shocks happen before. They are selling players. They've got rid of Flecken already. They brought in Kelleher, so arguably an upgrade, but it might take a little bit of time. Norgard's off to Arsenal as well, so they've lost their captain or are very close to losing their captain. And Mbermo, their talisman, looks very likely to be off as well. All of that compounded by the fact that they've also lost their manager, Thomas Frank, and their assistant manager, both gone to Spurs. And now Keith Andrews has stepped up from set piece coach to their first team manager. Now, I don't think that's as crazy as it sounds on paper. Andrews has got pedigree in coaching, and I think it was more just the fact he happened to be set piece at that time. Makes a good newspaper headline at the end of the day to say that. But it is still a risk. It's a manager without too much experience coaching teams directly by himself. And maybe there's an argument to say that they do suffer as a result of the players they've lost and the fact that they are coming into the season with a new manager. Wissa's still there at the moment. Maybe he gets poached, maybe he doesn't. And they do have some good, talented players around the squad still. So I do think it's a bold claim. I don't think it's likely to come true because we've got the 3 promoted sides to worry about. And there's a few other Premier League sides that were obviously worse off than Brentford last season anyway, that they would need to be far worse than this season too. But I don't think it's the craziest prediction. And maybe it's something to think about when we talk about FPL options. Is Wissa going to be as good an option? Is Sharda going to be as good an option without some of that support network around them? The manager, obviously, the build-up play from the keeper, and of course, Norgard and Mbermo both being gone as well. It might impact them, and it might impact them from an FPL point of view. I still think Wissa, if he comes in at under 7 million, could be a very good pickup. But let me know what you think, as always, in the comments below. I'm going to rate it Let's go 5 out of 10 on this one. So speaking of the promoted side staying up, Orphalet FPL, maybe don't listen to the username on this one, has predicted that 2 promoted clubs stay up in the 25-26 season. And considering the last 2 seasons in a row, all 3 promoted sides have gone straight back down, I would say that this is a bold prediction. And again, possibly FPL relevant, because if 2 of them stay up, maybe we can find some budget gems in some of these sides. Now, if I was to go one step further and maybe predict which sides might have the best chance of staying up, I'd probably go with Leeds. Considering they were a cut above in the Championship last season, they've obviously got a very strong squad anyway, having been in the Premier League not too long ago. And of course, the data look very, very strong for them as well. I still think for any promoted side to stay up, it is hard work now. The gap has never been bigger, but Leeds have a good shot at doing it if any side is going to. In terms of the way the data from the Championship to the Premier League translates, some of the algorithms are suggesting that Leeds aren't too far off competing at a Premier League level. So maybe they can make the step up. I'd say the other team that's most likely is probably Burnley, considering their very strong defensive record last season. But it is worth noting that they massively overperformed on their expected data defensively. So I think even they will find it fairly tough in the Premier League. And I do expect possibly all 3 of these sides to go down. I would personally say Leeds have the best shot. I'd say Burnley after that, and Sunderland. Obviously, I hope they do well. They're a solid Premier League side from seasons past, and it's great to see them back in the league. But considering they've lost Jobe Bellingham to Borussia Dortmund, and I wouldn't say they were quite at the level of Leeds or Burnley last season, I think they're the side that are probably going to find it the most difficult. But again, I can already see the comments coming in that Sunderland fans are going to attack me for this. I'm not saying you're a bad side by any means. I support Southampton. I'm wearing a shirt at the end of the day. So you're far better off than I am at the moment, and our club is. And I really hope you do well. But we have seen from the last couple of seasons that the gap is widening. And I do wonder whether that's just going to be just too much of a step up for any of these sides, but especially sides like Sunderland and maybe Burnley as well, to a certain extent, to stay up as well. So this is a bold claim. I'd go maybe 6 out of 10 on this one. So I thought I'd include this one just for a quick mention, because Alex Volo is a legend in the FPL community. And if you've clicked on this video, it's because you probably quite liked my thumbnail design. It's all Alex Volo this season. He did a fantastic job. Everything you see is him. So do go check him out if you're looking for some graphic design work. Absolutely premium product. So happy with what he's done. His bold claim, on the other hand, is just yet more Mykolenko prop from him. If you know him, if you know his account, you know he loves a bit of Mykolenko. And he's not the worst FPL option, but to say that he's going to be a top 5 high-scoring defender this season might be a stretch. Although, let's be fair here. Let's look at it from the other perspective. If Everton are as defensively solid as they were last season, Pickford was the top scoring keeper last season, it is worth noting, then is it crazy to suggest an Everton defender could also make the step up and also be a good FPL option? Probably not crazy, but I think to be a top 5 high-scoring defender, you can't just rely on clean sheets. You also need some attacking returns. And historically, Mykolenko has been very, very poor at getting the attacking returns. So I think he'll be a solid FPL option at maybe 4.5. If we're unlucky, 5 million, he might become a little bit less relevant. But he probably won't get the attacking returns required unless they get loads and loads of clean sheets. I don't think he'll get the attacking returns required to be a top 5 scoring defender. However, I'm willing to be proven wrong, and Alex Volo knows what he's talking about. So hopefully I am wrong on this one. I'm going to go with 8 out of 10 because I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a bold claim, but I do quite like it, just for sentiment. Right, so we're going to rattle through the next 3 very quickly because they're all Chelsea bold predictions. First up from Hungary Sobo, we've got Delap to get to 100 points before any other FPL player. That is a hell of a bold prediction, considering some of the players that we've got to pick from this season. Delap is a good option. He will start game week 1, and I do expect him to do well this season, but to be the first to 100 points, that is very bold. I hope for this prediction's sake it comes true, because that would be phenomenal, and we've got a hell of a bargain on our hands, because I reckon he comes in at something like 6.5 million. If that's the case, what a prediction this has been, and I hope you're right. But for me, that seems relatively unlikely. On to 13, even more unlikely perhaps, but again, I really hope it comes true. Reece James to complete a full season without injury. what a phenomenal player he can be. We've seen it in seasons past before he started getting those recurring injury problems. And he has been nursed back to health at a glacial pace over the last season. He does look fit and firing, but to get through a full season without an injury for Reece James seems like mission impossible. So I'd say both of those are very bold claims. Although, again, I hope it comes true because I reckon he gets a price reduction, or I can't even remember what he was last season, but compared to what he used to be, I reckon he'll be around 5 million, which is fair considering the injury doubts. But if he does get back to his best, 5 million could be an absolute steal in a pretty good defense. And then finally, number 14, Pedro Neto to have the breakthrough season. So we've had some optimistic predictions on both James and on Delap, but Pedro Neto, as a player who's been there for a season now and has bedded in down that right-hand side pretty nicely, I don't think this is that crazy either. I think that this one could be a nice little bold claim that might have a decent chance of coming true. He does always look electric when he plays. He's never been absolutely nailed for minutes, but I would say that he's still their first choice when it comes to a starting 11. And if he plays well to begin with, there's no reason why he should drop out of the squad or out of the starting 11, even with a pretty strong squad that Chelsea have. The one thing that would put me off this prediction is they have got so much depth now. They're still signing new wingers and players that can play across that three behind the striker. So Joao Pedro could play right wing, could play left wing, could play centrally. Palmer can obviously play. Gittins could also play in any of those positions. So I don't think it's a certainty that he's locked in down that right-hand side. If they get rid of Madueke, then maybe it gets a little bit more likely. Out of these three bold predictions, I think it's my favourite one. I think it's the one that's most likely to come true. So I'll give this one a 7. I'll give Reece James a 5 because I think it's unlikely, although maybe he has gotten past the injury doubts. And then with Delap, I think that's the least likely. So I'm going to give it a 4, maybe a 3 actually, because it's least likely, but I still quite like it. If it can come true, then wow, what a player we've got on our hands. So as promised, I'm going to wrap up today with 3 bold predictions of my own, and I don't want to pull any punches here. First up, I'm going with Phil Foden, who was a non-issue last season, let's face it. But I think he's going to get back to his best this season. My bold prediction, and I needed to really push it to make it bold enough, because I think a lot of people expect him to at least do better. I'm going with him to get 200 plus points this season. So a lot needs to go his way for that to be the case. He needs to nail down a starting spot, which he didn't have last season. And he needs to be a reliable point scorer with both goals and assists throughout the campaign. He probably needs a few set pieces here and there as well. But I don't think it's completely outlandish to suggest that he could get back to his best. I am still adamant that he is a fantastic, I nearly said generational talent. I would maybe go one step down from that. World-class talent at his best. And he's still got the best yet to come, in my personal opinion. So I think he'll be an option in FPL this season at times. He'll probably get a price reduction as well. So maybe 8.5, maybe 8 million if we're lucky. And if that's the case, and we see the minutes improving from what we saw last season, I think he could be a real factor this year. And I don't think it's crazy to suggest that 200 points is within his capabilities for this season. Now, obviously, I can't rate my own bold predictions here, so leave a comment below what you think of this one and what you think of the next two as well. So my second bold prediction, number 16 overall, is defenders to be back in fashion this year. And I needed to put something objective onto it. So I've gone with 5 defenders to score north of 150 points. Now, that might not sound bold on the surface, but when you look at the points scored last season, only one player, one defender, got above 150, and that was Gvardiol, and he only did it by a couple of points as well. So it was a very sparse year, very down year for defenders. Can we get back to a few years ago where big at the back was a factor? I think that trends kind of rise and fall in football almost like waves, and I think we've maybe moved towards a wave where defenders are going to be relevant in FPL yet again. Every season has a different theme, and I think defenders could be back up to their best this season, especially if we see a little bit of a BPS change, because last season it took so much for them to get any bonus points, whereas this season hopefully we see a little correction back to normal where defenders can get bonus points a little bit more easily. I think there are also enough defenders in the game this this season that have the upside potential of attacking returns, but also the sort of bread and butter clean sheet points that you'd expect. I think Arsenal defenders, if they can stay fit, are unlikely to have a down season like they did last year. Gabriel obviously injured for a fair bit. Arsenal didn't keep as many clean sheets as you would have hoped. I think it was 14, maybe 13 overall. If they can get back to 16 or 17, which isn't a massive jump, then they'll probably get defenders over 150. I think Man City as well, at times were pretty poor defensively, were getting better towards the end, and they were changing their defenders so often that only Gvardiol really had the opportunity to get north of 150. This season, I would think that Gvardiol is a lock yet again, so he's got a good chance, but also Ait-Nouri is so attacking that even without playing every single minute of every game, I think he's got a shot of getting north of 150. Then you go to Chelsea, and Cucurella plays a very similar role to Ait-Nouri this season, I would expect. A bit of a box crasher, gets a decent amount of attack and returns, and if Chelsea have a bit of an uptick in their defensive numbers, then Cucurella could also maybe challenge that 150 points. And then finally at Liverpool, you've got Kerkez, you've got Van Dijk, you've got Frimpong, all defenders that if they get the consistent minutes, Van Dijk probably the most secure there, but Kerkez and Frimpong, with the attacking data that they put up, I think they've got a shot at over 150 points as well. Maybe one or two sneaky outsiders. You could look at Munoz at Crystal Palace, might be able to match what he did last season, perhaps go one step further. And Porro, who was in an awful Spurs defence last season, but still got attacking returns. If he's still locked in to start, which no reason to think he won't be, and they can add a few more clean sheets, then maybe he's an option as well. And I reckon he comes in at 5 million. So I think there are 7 or 8 defenders there that could score over 150. I don't think this is that crazy, but let me know again in the comments below what you think. And my final bold prediction of the video is obviously me winning FPL, because I can't do a bold predictions video without at least suggesting that I've got an outside shot of winning it. It's unlikely, isn't it? Let's be honest. But I'm throwing it in there anyway, because if it does come true, and the 1 in a 10 million chance that it does, then I'm going to use this, I'm going to clip it, and I'm going to say I predicted it all along. So that's the reason this is in there. But if you've enjoyed today's video, back me in the comments below. Say if you think I'm absolutely insane for even putting this in the video. And importantly, if you enjoyed the video before I got all cocky and said I was going to win FPL, leave a like. Please hit subscribe as well. You won't miss out on any future content. And I'll see you next time, where we'll be ramping up towards the start of the FPL season.